I thought I'd start with a take that one advertiser has on how catalogues are operating in the digital age. I'm sure many of you have seen it, but for those of you who haven't, I'd find it from somewhere from YouTube if I were you. Normally I put that at the end of the presentation as a kind of a way of sort of showing a great idea. I'm now going to try and live up to that. I have some videos, not as sexy as made as those ones. That came out of Asia, by the way. It might look like it came out of Sweden, but it came out of Asia. And I think it's a great example of reminding a lot of people out there that the world is not completely gone digital. That our business, Royal Mail, your businesses, it's about how the digital world and the non-digital world work together. MarketReach, where I work, is the kind of promotional and marketing arm of Royal Mail. We're tasked with basically understanding how people use mail and giving advertisers reasons to use mail, to help to use mail, and understanding about how consumers are using mail in all aspects. I have the pleasure of looking after the research division, which means I get to do some great pieces of research, whether it be qualitative, quantitative, modelling. And I'm going to show quite a few of those insights today. You're always told when you're presenting, never make an apology. I'm going to make an apology. I've got to leave straight after this presentation. So I have a colleague over there, Rob, who has kindly volunteered to answer any questions you have that I can't. So feel free to ask him or me if you see me, if you have any questions. So to give a bit of context about how catalogues are operating within the digital world, I thought I'd talk a bit about e-commerce. Lots of figures out there. So I've gone to a source that many people trust and understand, which is Mintel. Mintel, in a recent report, showed that 95% of people with internet access have shopped in the last 12 months. This is quite ubiquitous and it's grown significantly over the last few years. Drilling into that, by category, about 70% of people have bought clothing or footwear. 39% have bought groceries. So the penetration of use of the internet and the digital sphere for shopping does vary significantly from category to category. But what this means, and I'm sure you know this, but it's important to remind people, what this means at an aggregate level, in terms of the total share of retail going online, is that around about 11 or 12% of total sales are online. Now, we're in a little bubble, and we might feel, without looking at the data, this figure is a lot higher. But the fact is that it's growing, but it's not as big as some commentators might believe. But when you drill in by individual product category, again looking at data from Mintel, you can see that 38% of total retail sales in the electrical goods sector were bought online. 12% in clothing, 8% in beauty, down to 4% in groceries. There's massive differences there. But when you drill behind that and look at the projections that Mintel and others have got, it's suggesting that all are growing at about the same rate, around about 15% growth this year. So whether we like it or not, whether our business is ready for it or not, whether our business is making use of it or not, e-commerce is growing rapidly from sector to sector. But where do people go to make those individual purchases? So we looked at data from a survey called TGI, Target Group Index, and identified the proportion of the adult population who bought something from a mail order catalogue or that catalogue's associated website in the last 12 months. We found about a third of the population have bought something from a catalogue in its various guises. And of those people, about 75% have ordered through the online facilities. About 25% have ordered through the phone, about 15% through post, and still there's a small number of people who are purchasing in certain categories through agents. Obviously those figures, for the more numerate of you, you will realise they add up to more than 100. That's because people have used different channels. As a marketeer, it's really important to know where people are buying. But from my perspective, it's more important to understand where people are searching for their information before they choose to make the purchase through individual channels. So it wouldn't be a research presentation without a Venn diagram in it. So, truthful, I've delivered a Venn diagram for you. This is looking at where people, before they made that purchase through the catalogue or catalogue website, where people have searched for information. So you can see here that 22.1% of people, even if they shopped online, 22.1% of people have only looked for that information to help them make that purchase via a catalogue. 40% have only looked online. There's about 26-27% who've looked at both the catalogue and the website. This is really important in terms of laying down your marketing communications, because if you are only communicating via the digital sphere, you're probably missing up to 60% of people who are accessing information via other channels. So, living in the media and advertising and London bubble that we do, I have to remind people that one of the reasons why there are still a decent chunk of people out there who are not doing everything via the digital sphere only is because, this is data from Ofcom from a couple of months ago, their latest figures, 18% of the population still do not have internet at home. 34% of the population still do not have a smartphone. And at the time of this survey, over half of the population did not have a tablet. Now, for any of you who commute into London on a train, as far as I can work out, everybody's attached to a tablet all day, every day. So these figures are really important to remind ourselves that not everybody is fully connected to the digital world all day, every day. And to communicate to them, to help them make decisions about products and purchases, you need to be looking at other means in addition to the digital sphere. So, that's what people are doing. What I want to try and do is drill a bit further into some insights that we've managed to obtain recently from some projects that we did, to try and understand what's the consumer reaction specifically to mail within this digitised world. The full report of this is in the handout. So I've got about 3 charts and some figures here, but lots more information is in the little booklets that you've been given and you received. Looking specifically at one type of digital communication, so this one, email versus mail, we wanted to try and see whether people value mail or value email more or less. And what we found is 57% of people say they feel more valued when they receive mail, versus only 17% who say the same thing about email. 56% of people saying mail grabs their attention, whereas only about a third of the population are saying that email grabs their attention. 55% saying mail gives a better impression of a brand, versus about half that number saying the same thing of email. Now, does anyone have questions for the audience? A bit of audience participation. What happened on June the 29th, 2007? Well, firstly, it was my birthday. And secondly, the iPhone launched. Now, more by luck than judgment, the Royal Mail had just done a piece of research a couple of months beforehand, asking these exact same questions. So what we did was we reprised the work the back end of last year to see if people's perceptions of mail had changed since the launch of the iPhone and all of the changing in behaviour that the smartphone and the iPhones have brought to the consumers and the way they can access information via the internet. We were very pleasantly surprised to find that across that sort of 7-year period, that people are saying they feel even more valued by mail than they did then. That mail grabs their attention even more than it did then, and it gives a better impression of a brand. Research technical point of view, we use the same research company, the same method, everything the same, says as far as we could to ensure that we were comparing like with like. And what this has shown us, and confirmed to us, is that as people are getting more and more digital information, there are some things in the world that they are valuing more and more, and that's something that is physical. But the role of that physical thing is definitely changing. And so what we wanted to see was, well, why is email performing in one way? Why is mail performing another way? Why, as I will go on to show later, why are catalogues still incredibly relevant to consumers, albeit in a slightly different way from a few years ago? So, digging around from a number of data sources, one of the reasons that we felt that people valued emails less than the physical entity was not a lot of people are opening them. Data from Lithium Email Analytics showed that only 21% of acquisition emails are opened. Excuse me. Only 29% of retention emails are opened. In fact, just over 50% of emails are deleted within 2 seconds. And if you go back through the trend, that is getting a higher and higher and higher figure because of the growth of mobile. I'm sure most of this room have got a smartphone, probably an iPhone, and that the second you get an email, there's a very, very high chance you'll just delete. And this is something that we're seeing with consumers. In the old days, they were opening a lot of emails. Now, a lot of emails are getting deleted, and you have to really work hard to cut through and get them to open it. In fact, 70% of the population, when we asked them, said they are getting too many emails. The flip side of that is 72% of the population are actually saying they open all of the posts they get, according to some work coming out of the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising. Looking specifically at mail, because there is a belief in some quarters that all mail is junk mail and is, of course, instantly recycled. And so we did a survey quite recently looking at different types of mail to get sit people down and say, right, of that type of email, from the last delivery that you got, what did you do with it? Did you open it? Did you interact with it? And then as we go on and show you later, did you share? Did you do something as a result of it? Did you go on to make a purchase? Did it help you make a purchase? And what we found is that bills and statements, or sometimes called transactional mail, 83% of that is opened. I'm more worried about the 17% of people who are not opening their credit card statements. That might explain some debt issues in society. But in terms of brochures, 7 out of 10 people said that the brochures they've got from a company they've got a relationship with, they opened. And 56% of them then went on to interact with that, i.e. they did something as a result of opening that brochure, i.e. they didn't bin it straight away or they didn't put it on a shelf for later use. In fact, over 50% of the population said they opened a brochure from a company that they've not had a relationship with before. These are quite high figures when you compare to accessing the numbers that came through the email. So that was about mail in general. What I now wanted to do was drill in a bit more into some work that we've done looking at the role that catalogues play within that. We've seen that mail is received and opened, people value it, but what about specifically about catalogues? The data that I'm going to show now comes out of 4 studies that we've done across the last 12 months or so. We did some work, both qualitative and quantitative, specifically looking at catalogues. The beauty about Qual is it does churn out some videos, and some of those I will show later. So they're not, get my apology in advance here, the videos I've got are not high production, because they aren't set with an actor in a beautifully
lit studio. These are real consumers. We sat down and asked them to talk about their relationship with catalogues. We undertook some ethnographic research. Does everybody know what ethnographic research is? Basically, we stalk people. We go into the house and they know about it. They know about it, so it's all legal and decent and honest. But we filmed people. We filmed people for a week and looked at how they interacted with all sorts of media, not just mail. And we went back to them later and spoke to them about what we'd seen. And quite often, we had to point out things that they were diametrically opposed to what they said they did. So, for example, there's one particularly northern Persian, shall we say, very large, quite frightening, frankly. And he was 100% certain that all mail, the second it came through the door, if it looked like it was selling me something, I binned it straight away. I think at one point we caught him picking up a brochure and sitting down for 20 minutes at his breakfast bar, consuming it and talking to his wife about clothes that he might want to buy from it. That's because it's just part of his life. And it was great to be able to go back to him and say, do you realise what you're doing with the mail? Do you realise how you're consuming it? His reaction was interesting. Luckily, I don't have that on video for you. We also drilled in a bit into some of the digital sphere using two surveys that some of which I've shown information before. And those digital surveys really allowed us to look at what consumers were doing with catalogues. And the key thing that we found, the thing that was screaming out the data once we looked at it, was that catalogues are brilliant at driving people online. Mail is great at driving people online, but catalogues are absolutely brilliant at driving people online. And this is symptomatic of the way that catalogues have changed over the last few years, from being the place where you sell stuff into a place where you inspire people, you inform people, you educate people, you entertain people, and then if you're doing your job well through other communication means, you drive them to transact with you through the digital sphere. And what we found is, as a direct result of receiving mail, 86% of people had connected with a business. 87% had been influenced to make purchases. 92% of people who received some mail had been driven to some kind of digital activity. 4 in 10 had downloaded something, and over 50% of the population, as a result of receiving something through the post, had engaged in some kind of social media activity. I then, luckily it wasn't me, I have a member of my team who I tasked with digging around and finding if there were certain types of people that were more responsive to these kind of communications. And it was interesting to see that the people we would define as digitally active are the people who are most responsive to physical things coming through their letterbox, whether it would be a letter, a brochure, or a catalogue. Of the digitally active, 73% had sent an email to the sender as a result of receiving something. 50% had downloaded the sender's app, and that's sort of 29% more likely to have done that than the population as a whole. They are 42% more likely than the population as a whole to have followed a sender on Twitter. What this is demonstrating is that mail and catalogues and brochure are a great way of driving people to communicate with you in a digital sphere. The way I describe it to a lot of our clients is quite simple. If you want to start a conversation with somebody you've defined as being very, very digitally active, sending them an email is not the best way to do it. Send them something physical, send them something that they open, they interact with, that they value, and initiate the conversation through that means. The conversation that can then continue through digital spheres, but to get the conversation started, good old print material is showing that it is still very powerful and very much has a role to play. So drilling specifically into catalogues, this concept of driving people online is something that came very clearly out of the qualitative research that we did. And I thought I'd quickly show you a video here of a couple of the respondents and how they talk about what they deal with their catalogues and how they go about buying as a result of things they've seen in their catalogues. So what we found in terms of adding some numbers to that is that 66% of people say catalogues often prompt them to go online. That's not just prompt, it's often prompting them to go online. But it works the other way around. Over 50% of the population have said they've gone online and then specifically requested that a catalogue be sent to them. So this is a symbiotic relationship. It's a classic case of showing how non-digital can drive digital and digital can drive non-digital. And screaming out at this is to ensure the best use of your resources, to make sure that everything is joined up. And I'm sure this isn't the case with all of you guys, but a lot of advertisers that Royal Mail talks to, they kind of focus mainly on the digital sphere, and one of our roles is just to point them to these kind of figures and go, look guys, you must make sure it's how the complementary nature of everything, it's how everything works together that's important, and that's what will make sure that consumers come to you, buy from you and return to you. And one of the things we found from the catalogue research is that catalogues is not only driving people online as we've just seen, but it's driving people online in a buying mindset, which is great. You've done all your homework offline, they're going online to the great websites that you've got to do the fulfillment. 65% of people say that if they've decided they're going to buy something from a catalogue, they will usually end up buying it from the company that gave them the catalogue, that they saw it in the catalogue, rather than going and buying it from someone else. 51% of people said they use catalogues to plan what they're going to buy, and they're more likely to buy something from the brand if they've gone to the catalogue rather than directly to the website. And 50% of the population say they buy more frequently if they regularly receive catalogues. And this is the kind of constant prompt to purchase, which, as I showed earlier, people are opening the catalogues, opening the brochures, opening the mail, and that's what's prompting them. You might have their email address, but a lot of the time they would not necessarily be opening the email enough to prompt them to purchase, to remind them, to show them the stuff that they could buy. And why is this? Well, we drilled into this in the Qual research, and the way I summarise it is catalogues, the way that they've changed from being a purely buy, product, price, into a piece of literature that is about inspiring people. And it shocked me, because I don't shop that much from catalogues, but it really did shock me the amount of people saying that catalogues are inspiring them. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, what's coming out of that is that mail and catalogues, or catalogues specifically, are great at giving people the time to sort of look through something and inspire them. It's the old cliche of it's kind of a lean back medium, it's a sort of absorption medium, but when people go online, they're going targeted, they're going to specifically buy something. But obviously, if you can get to them through your catalogues first, they might, from the data we've got, specifically go to your website to buy your stuff. What we also found is that one of the strengths of of catalogues is they allow your brand to live in the home. One of the issues that we have in the whole postal medium is this perception that I alluded to earlier, that all mail is junk mail and it's binned straight away. And we've been collecting lots of information recently which proves without doubt not only that people open mail of various types, but they interact with it, but they share it. Somewhere in the region of 23% of all mail is shared. So a partner might pass on that piece of information to a friend or a family member. We've identified that mail is kept for, on average, for addressed mail, around about sort of 3 weeks, up to unaddressed mail, around about 5 to 6 weeks. So mail is kept in the house, and it gives multiple opportunities to communicate. And in that respect, the daddy of them all is catalogues. They hang around the house for a lot longer than any other types of communication, and give constant opportunities for people to look at them again. And the other thing that came out of the research is that a lot of mail is hidden away in the office or the bedroom. Catalogues are displayed. If they're great, beautiful works of art, they are displayed. They're also put out by people to sort of show, look, this is the kind of place I shop. This is the kind of brand that I like. And they leave them around the house to demonstrate to friends, family, visitors that this is the kind of company that I have a relationship with. Yeah, I mean, we found that 68% of people love getting catalogues from the brands and products they like, and 71% of the people say they like to have catalogues that are relevant to them around the house. But putting some other numbers in it, 71% of people say they keep catalogues for more than a month. This gives you plenty of opportunities to communicate your brands. 73% of people say they read their catalogues in the living room. We talked about, I'm sure everybody's talked about multitasking. Catalogues are often another medium that people are consuming when they're watching television. And 40% of people are sharing catalogues with their partners. Or in some respects, I have a 13-year-old who's a bit OCD, frankly, and it's about this time of the year that he persuades us to go and get the Argos catalogue, and about 3 packs of post-it notes with arrows pointing to Christmas opportunities. And that's not unique, I found out. I just thought my son was rather weird. Turns out he's quite like a lot of other children. So what do people feel about catalogues? Well, we had, I think, 800 hours of video, and some poor sod went through all of it and typed it all up in terms of the way that people were talking about catalogues. Because we wanted to see what are the language. And we just dropped this into a classic word cloud or Wordle. And there's 2 really key things that were coming out of us in terms of what people are feeling about catalogues. One, the very functional, very rational thing about it's easy, it's about purchases, it's about prompting. These are all very positive but quite rational, but also within the language that people are talking about. There are words like enticing, enjoy, engaging, value, feel. These are really strong emotional triggers and emotional words that people are talking about catalogues. And those are not the words that you normally associate with any kind of medium or any kind of method that you can talk to consumers. That's really very positive. But at the end of the day, all this loveliness of beautiful catalogues, people sharing them, keeping them, pointing to them, saying, I want to import that into my room, that's fine and dandy, but does it actually mean anything in terms of return on investment? Does that mean anything in terms of money? Are catalogues really delivering? Good, thank God. The answer is yes. There are some really positive stories. We found that 74% of people had bought from a retailer within 6 months of receiving a catalogue. Of these, 81% positively admitted that they were influenced by the catalogue. Now, I'm sure you've sat down with your children and your parents, and none of them will ever admit to be influenced by anything, let alone catalogues or advertising. So this is a really high figure. People are admitting that the catalogues are definitely influencing their purchase activities. 40% reported buying more than they intended when they shopped with a catalogue. And really interesting, the ones that are more likely to say that are the youngsters. Okay? So the youngsters are taking catalogues, they're liking catalogues, and they're buying more as a result of catalogues, or more from catalogues than they originally intended. And 50% say they buy more frequently if they regularly receive a catalogue. These are all positive scores and positive reasons in terms of catalogues driving ROI. So in summary, what I've been able to drive through, and there were, if you counted, there were 6 different pieces of research there. We've seen that online retail is really growing. And it's growing fast. It's more important in some sectors than others, but it's growing at a pretty rapid rate across all sectors. There's strong evidence that we can demonstrate about the power of the physical mail driving customers online. And people who buy more and buy more often if it's a catalogue they're receiving. The catalogues appeal to people both on an emotional and rational level. And if any of you have been following the System 1, System 2 brain processing debate, the behavioural economics debate, it's incontrovertible. You've got to engage people on an emotional level to get them to do anything. Every decision that a human being will make is made as a result of the emotional, quick brain operating. When you then ask them what happens, their slow, rational brain will justify and explain what they've done. But it's the emotional brain that's driving all decision making, and therefore it's really important to be talking to people where you're engaging their emotions, you're getting them involved in some shape or form with your brand, and catalogues appear to be pretty darn good at that. We've seen that catalogues are a pleasurable, leisurely, inspirational shopping experience that people return to time and time again, and that they give your brand a life within the home that works really hard. But what I thought I'd summarise is instead of me just saying catalogues are brilliant, I thought I'd turn to one of our respondents, a lady called Vanessa, who frankly we didn't pay her but probably should have.